Welcome to Bo's Garage. This is a channel where we work on stuff. We talk about cars and motorcycles and everything that goes through. We're going to have project cars, project bikes, and adventures and things like that. Reviews of tools and stuff. We're just going to kind of do it all, and whatever people like, well, that's just what we're going to roll with. Today I'm going to do something a little different and a little fun. I'm servicing 2015 Nissan Titan, and I'm going to tell you the history of the Titan. So we're going to have a nice discussion about what my personal belief, one of the most underrated trucks on the market today. For servicing wise, we've got a good old Nissan oil filter, 7 quarts of good old 5W30, some brake clean to get rid of the mess, and a good old VK56DE that needs a little love. The Nissan Titan was Nissan's answer to the full-size truck question. Nissan wanted to get in the market and offer something that was an alternative to maybe bring some people over to the Nissan brand. And it worked, but it didn't work at the same time. Unfortunately, due to Nissan's reputation with terrible transmissions and their inability to innovate and keep this truck relevant, the Nissan is now going the way of the West. The old Titan into 2024 will be gone. Sad day, but it is what it is when it comes to business. This truck was never meant to be I'm going to knock the F-150 off of its game, but it was meant to be a solid seller. And they sold decent. They sold about on par with Toyota. But, for every one of these that got sold, Ford sold, 150, 200 friggin' F-150s? So, it goes the way of the dodo. Sucks, but, it is what it is. And over the course of its life cycle, this is a first generation Titan. This is a 2015. This is the end of the line for the first generation. The first generation ran from 2004 to 2015. 2016, they did a complete redesign on the trucks, and they offered a secondary model called the Titan XD, or Extra Duty. It was a tweener truck, which was really weird. It was meant to not be, it was for people that didn't want a big 3/4 ton, but it wanted a little more capability than a half ton. The problem is that market is very small, so obviously the XD didn't sell that well. And at that point, it was also offered with a second engine option. It was offered with a 5-liter Cummins V8 diesel. And from what I've heard from people that own them, they were not the most reliable Cummins engines. Mainly plagued with DPF issues, the EGR coolers leaking, and also everybody's favorite problem, and I mean everybody's, turbo issues. But the venerable old VK56 soldiered on. The VK56 is a 5.6-liter V8. The first generation of these trucks, the early ones, were 305 horsepower. It bumped to like 317 in the late 2000 noughties to early teens. I think the final iteration this year was like 360, and then the new generation bumped it up to 390, and then the refresh in 2020 brought the VK56 to, they got in direct injection and are 400 horsepower off pump gas. Anybody that's been around a Titan will tell you they run like a scalded dog down the highway. This truck, despite being, slightly old, slightly abused, it still will happily motivate itself down the highway and will happily suck the paint off most 6.2s that line up next to it. Don't believe me? Let's line it up. Now, that being said, it's a shame. Yeah, we're going to cut that out of there. Now, with that being said, every manufacturer has their problems. Nissan's problem is failure to innovate and CEOs blowing money. This was developed at the time when Carlos Ghosn was in power, and Nissan did this one just like they did the Frontier. They just kind of left it, and they didn't think to innovate. They thought people would just buy the same thing over and over again, not realizing, In the North American truck market, most truck buyers are like kids that only eat chicken nuggets and tater tots. You have to keep dangling something shiny in front of them before they actually try something different. And there was people that tried different, and they liked these. There's people that didn't like these trucks. They didn't like fuel economy, or maybe it wasn't that comfortable for them. You know, everybody has their reasonings for not liking a vehicle. I've had the spectrum. I've had Ford trucks, Dodge trucks, Chevrolet trucks. Me personally, I would pick a Titan any day of the week. And between driving all of them over the years, to me, the best in use and everything else would have to be the Titan. I will say GM trucks ride smoother, and obviously an LS is infinitely customizable and cheap to modify, where a VK is like a Coyote when it comes to building. You can build and get some nasty horsepower out of these things, but you're going to have a deep pocketbook just like you're playing with a Coyote. Now, when the first generation ended and the second generation kicked off, these trucks were there. In fact, Nissan's marketing campaign was "We stood on the shoulders of giants," and this truck has always been just kind of the underdog. It's, you know, the forgotten bastard child of the automotive world. I've always argued, especially these first gen trucks, I always said if you wanted a Tundra but you didn't want to spend Tundra money, this is where it's at. Now, I know there'll be people who say, oh, you know, Dodge is the best, Ford is the best, Chevrolet is the best. As long as I've been in the industry and as many cars as I've worked on over the year, they all suck. Every car manufacturer has its problems. It's what problems you're willing to put up with. These trucks, the problems you have with them is obviously Nissan mid-2000s interiors, which means cheap plastic that will break, and a V8 that, despite being pretty stout, will pass everything but a filling station. This truck is two-wheel drive with I think it's this truck has a very high gear ratio. I think it's like a 2 something or another, 290 or something like that. So it's a very high ratio. It's a dog off the line, but on the highway, you know, even at 75 miles an hour, this thing's pegging 1800 RPM, but it still can't get over 20 miles to the gallon. It's a very inefficient truck. Now, the newer trucks I've heard get better mileage with the 9-speed automatic, where this is a 5-speed automatic. But the way I look at it, no one I've ever met has ever bought a full-size truck for gas mileage. Most people buy a truck to work, and that's something this truck does very well. So, with my jibber jabbering out the way, let's get to servicing. Now, my truck's got a little bit of rust on it. We got a power steering leak right here, this joint. But all in all, it's a solid truck. The little rust is from, if you're unfamiliar, about down here in South Mississippi and Louisiana, after hurricanes, we usually have what's called salt mud washed up on roads. Well, we've driven through it a few times, and yeah, winds up getting a little crusty. But oil filter's placed right here with this nice little drainage tray, and of course your oil pan right here at the back, a lower oil pan. You can see because of that salt mud, the engine block looks about like it was sitting on the bottom of the ocean. But, you know, it is what it is. All right, so we're gonna get the drain plug loose. Get her. Get a little dribble going there. Yep. Dirty old 5W30. Now that we drained all that good old stuff out of there, put our drain plug back. Let's scoot on up here to the filtrate. Now, granted, this design is 1,000 times better than Ford's over the axle with the 5.0s and 3.5s. I still will say GM takes the cake for putting the oil filter right next to the drain plug. But let's see, get it lined up. Let that drip off. Alright, so now we're going to get our fill tray. Get the little condom off. And run her back up in here. Then we're going to get some good old Cosby sauce. Good. Alright, so now I've got my preferred engine oil of choice, which is a Castrol GTX high mileage. Everybody's got their preferred brand. You know, the argument can be made, like with your old stuff, oil is oil. However, you know, I believe spend a couple bucks more, get a decent oil like Castrol or Mobil or Royal Purple. You know, a few bucks could be worth an engine, especially if it's as finicky as like my wife's car with that 3.6 liter GM. But it's going to take 7 quarts of this good stuff. So, there. I'm sorry I make dad noises. I'm a dad, so I'm entitled to make those noises. You know, good oil is always worth the buck. And I use that Buick over there, mine. I use Castrol Edge. Same with my wife, the Dexos. That's what GM calls for. Technically, GM, well, Nissan, you can use whatever. They don't really aren't particular. I know Mobil is Nissan's provider. I like the Castrol. I always used it. So, just tend to stick with it. Whew. I'm about whooped today. Even though this isn't a lot of work, I've been at work all day, so it's kind of one of those things. So, I'll remove that funnel, put our fill cap back on, grab some Cosby sauce, and give the old funnel a good cleaning. Good enough. That being said, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Tell me down in the comments what would you like to see next. What would you like me to see, take on, explain. Hey, let's build this.